dotting I's and crossing T's. Excuse me. Oh, that's good, I think. Okay. Yeah, with the earbuds in your ears, I definitely don't hear the bloop or anything that I'm saying at all. Like, it contains the sound a lot differently than the headset does. Interesting benefit.
So you can't hear anything at all?
At all. Whatsoever.
That's beautiful.
I can't hear my voice. Nothing. Okay.
Okay, time for me to log in and share this.
Indeed.
All right, Book of Faces.
More options. Share to newsfeed. Get rid of that. And we'll post that. Share and post that. Cool. Okay. That has been done as it needs to be done. Okay, that's good. We'll just pause this so there's no lag. What's that? Autoplay is off. Okay, that's a new button I've never seen before. Cool. I like new buttons. Alright, let me get everything situated while you're typing away. Let's see.
Phone is no longer.
Hello, everybody.
in
Welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta. And I've got it down pat, and I don't think I'll ever lose it again from this point. We'll just prophetically say that.
I'm okay with that.
So hello, everybody. Welcome. It's been a while. I want to know, for those who are watching us currently, and even after this point, if you are watching this in the future after it's been posted and you've been thinking about how your 2020 Christmas went, let us know, because I'm very curious. I think everyone's had different experiences. I think probably a lot of people didn't really get to enjoy it the way that they wanted to because of the restrictions involving COVID. And I know for sure everyone's had to do things differently. So let me know how your Christmas has gone. We haven't been live last week because, again, it's been the holiday season, and so we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to spend time with our friends and family. I actually personally got the chance to host a small Christmas event where you were there, Tim, you and your wife and several other people, and that was a lot of fun. We did Dirty Santa, we had delicious ham and other things, and it was a good time. I'm glad that I was able to host that and, give some people a Christmas, because I know there was at least 3 people in our small group that was not able to see their family like they wanted to. So I was happy to be able to host something in lieu of that. But yeah, let us know how your Christmas went specifically. We would like to hear about that. But other than that, as you were letting us know, and as we're kind of setting things up, welcome back. It's good to see you. Today is Get Naked Monday, where again Tim and I metaphorically get naked and talk about things that we're personally going through and how we're handling them. And this week is Tim's week, of which you were specifically wanting to kind of bring up something, Tim, that you in the past used to really struggle with as an addiction.
Yes.
Something that we've talked about actually like a little bit here and there, just touching on it in some of the streams past. And so today you've got some new revelation regarding all this, because the thing that you struggled with before is not no it's no longer your master, and so now you're having an opportunity to look at
Hmm.
it from a different view, and kind of turn it from what was something that would have just kept you bound in one area and just not be productive to something that increases your productivity. And I'm speaking mysteriously right now, but I will drop all the mystique and give it over to you to describe what it is that you want to share with us today. So take it away.
Hmm. Well, actually, before we get started, I,
Oh,
I want to throw a couple questions out there, and this is to anybody watching, because I know that everybody has some kind of addiction that they're either struggling with or that there's the opportunity for them to struggle through. Um, and the questions I want to pose are: what makes an addiction unhealthy, and are all things you can be addicted to bad? Because when I think about addiction, there are thoughts that come to mind. Like I think about substance abuse. You think about addictions to things like pornography. You think about addictions to just bad behaviors. And a lot of times it's stuff that it just takes control of your thought processes and dominates your priorities. And that's what happened to me in a very, very serious. Brandon, what do you think? Do you think all addictions are bad? And do you think that it's possible for there to be things that are good but are bad in the way that we respond to them and how we manage them? What exactly makes an addiction unhealthy?
I think specifically there's a lot of things that are not bad but can be used incorrectly. Um,
Hmm.
that we just so quickly just label as bad because a lot of people have used it incorrectly, and then we don't look further into it. So, for instance, the people say that the root of all evil is money, and they just
Hmm.
just slap a label on that. We just need to get rid of money. It's terrible. It's bad. Whatever. Don't bother with it. But money is just an object. It can't kill you. It can't, you know, build something for you technically. And it just we're talking
Hmm.
literal cash, not the person handling the cash itself. Like, the credit card, the money in your bank, like all it's just a thing. It's not inherently good and it's not inherently evil. It just is. And so you can utilize money incorrectly. You can worship money, turning it into an idol where like you are constantly like fine-tuning your life specifically and exclusively to make as much money as you can, and then you can utilize that money to either, screw people over, like
Hmm.
buying your way into things you don't need. You can utilize that money also for good. I mean, you can utilize money to help, people who are down, like they're unable to take care of their needs, and you're able to come and help them with that specifically. So it's like, just because it can be used incorrectly does not mean that it is a bad thing. You know, there's just many different things of that nature. I think there are some things that are probably worse than others that really don't have too much of a good use for. But in general, most things aren't inherently bad. It's why are you using them and how are you using them? Like,
Hmm.
there are a lot of drugs that exist that could probably be used correctly, but people are using them for more selfish means that they don't really have
Oh,
a need
dude,
for.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Like
know,
Ariana's always telling me that. Well, actually, I don't want to go there because I don't want to.
HIPAA.
I won't go there. Yes, yes, but yeah, there's a lot of people that will abuse things like, and this is from my own personal experience, not doing it but seeing it, will abuse things like cigarettes or things such as ibuprofen, or in my family, there's been people that have abused things like medicinal narcotics, painkillers, and stuff. And I've known people that have just sold them. They got them from the doctor and they sold them because they had addictions to other types of narcotics, or like they would. Yeah, it could be bad. And then you have other things that are less serious, like video games, which were my situation, or watching TV or Netflix or whatever. And kind of drawing this closer to today's topic, what makes an addiction unhealthy? I used to be addicted helplessly to Final Fantasy 11, and that's the online game. I would spend a lot of time probably 18 hours a day playing it. And I probably could have done more if I didn't have to sleep. And I think kind of similar to other things that are addictions. What made it unhealthy for me was that it was my main priority. I found my identity in it. I was finding fulfillment in it. Um, there's also some escapism involved in it as well. I didn't like my situation, and this was something that I felt like I could control. Like a lot of times, people fall into addiction because it is the little part of their life they feel like they can control, like alcohol. It's like if your life is falling apart and your relationships are falling apart and your job is falling apart, you can't control other people. You can't control all these outside circumstances. You can only control how you respond to them, right? So it's really easy to find something that you can control and say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do because I feel more comfortable and safe here.
Yeah. And like in and of itself, like wanting to have control and having something that you can control is not a bad thing. It's just, what are you specifically trying to control, and are you able to be at peace if you don't have control in that particular situation? Because not every time are you going to be able to control this situation, and can you be at peace if you can't? And that's a very important question to ask, because there may come a time where you can't, and if you have all of your life built on your ability to control this situation, what happens when you can't control any further? So yeah. I just, like, I remember seeing someone make a post not too long ago about like some games that they were playing that was all about organizing things and cleaning messes and stuff of that nature. And they're like, do I have a problem?
Why would you play a game doing that? That's horrible. I don't like to do that in real life.
But it's like, it's something you can control. It gives you peace because it's like, I can just clean this up, and I can, because cleaning things up, when you get into the groove, it's a mindless task. It clears your head. Like, you can just sort and organize things, and like, oh, everything looks nice now and stuff, unlike my rest of my life, which is disorganized.
Well, it's weird because like you have a history of playing The Sims, and a lot of stuff in real life, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna clean my house, do my dishes, and it's like, but when you're in that game, it's like, ooh, dude, my character can clean the dishes. This is awesome,
Ironic.
Yeah, but just thinking about all things that you can be addicted to. I mean, there's substances and stuff, and like, today's topic, we're talking about going back into those things that you were previously addicted to, right? With a different perspective specifically, but it's like not everything should you go back into. I feel like if you had an addiction to heroin, yeah, I wouldn't say, okay, well, down the road when you're healthier, go back into it. Just make sure that you're good with it. Like there's not everything that this is applicable to. So right. I do want to make that distinction.
Right. But there will always be certain areas that are not necessarily wrong and not a bad thing where you can re-examine them again.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But Brandon, do you think that, in your professional opinion, do you think it's wise to go back into things that you were previously addicted to?
I think that, again, like we're talking about this whole time, it very much so depends on what it is. But I think there are some circumstances where it is important to return to the area that you once originally didn't handle well, so that way you can, one, see how you've grown, and two, there's just certain things you can learn looking at it from a different perspective. There was a time where I stopped playing Smite because the game itself just seemed too risque for me, the way that they created like the gods and did things of that nature. I was just like, I don't know about this. But I play Smite now again, and it serves as a confidence boost because it's no longer something that bothers me. Like, I'm able to see things and no longer be bothered by them, aroused by them, if you will. Like it's no longer something that it has control over me. But then there are other things in my life that I don't, like the pornography itself, are just, there's no way to play with that and not come away unburned. That's just something that will inevitably will lead, back to stuff I don't want. In the times where I did like specifically just thinking about like the times where I did fall back into pornography, the way I handled it now in comparison to the way that I handled it as a teenager is night and day. But that being said, it's still like, you know, not. I know that I still can't stay there anymore. Like, and I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it greatly depends on what it is. I think certain things, it's almost important and healing to be able to go back and look at it again, because it's like it shows you like how far you've come, and it can encourage you, and then it can help you feel like if it brings you to a place where you feel like now I'm in control, no longer is it control over me, that can then spread that confidence into other places, which I think growing in confidence in who you are in Christ is the ultimate goal and very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like that has a lot to do with it, because if I think about things that I struggled with in elementary school, in the middle school, then high school, every new stage of life that I've gotten to came with a different set of authority or sense of authority, different levels of confidence. Like, for instance, if I go back to high school and I think about all the insecurity that I had about my position in life, especially things I couldn't control, if I put my current self in my shoes back then, it's like, why am I worried about this? I think about that a lot. Like, if I was back then, I'd probably was just thinking, okay, well, I have these classes to get through. I got this homework to do. I'm just going to knock it out because, I mean, that's my role right now. Life is bigger than this right now. And I think that has a lot to do with my addiction to Final Fantasy XI, because back then, that constituted my entire world. My entire world was this. I didn't have other things. Like, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a lot of friends, I didn't have a career. I mean, I had a job, but I wouldn't say it was a career at the time. It was definitely just something that I had to do to meet needs. But every season of life where I've grown, I've just looked back and I see how small the thing that challenged me was.
Yeah.
And that's how Final Fantasy is as well, because there's so much more that's filling my life now than I had filling my life back then. I felt very empty back then. I think that's why it was so easy for me to fall into it.
Yeah, because if something is going to be a threat of falling into addiction, it's because it's found a way to fill a void. So if you come back to the same thing and the void is now being filled by the proper things, it no longer has the ability to be addictive. Like, for instance, like, there has been a moment in time in my life where I did have to step away from video games because I couldn't see myself without video games. And if I can't see myself without video games, there's a problem, because I don't need video games to survive. And so I spent, I don't think I spent a lot of time. I'm pretty sure I spent maybe about a week to 2 weeks of just not touching video games. And in that time, I discovered I enjoy to draw. I actually can draw and enjoy doing that, and I realized there are other activities. Plus, also, I enjoy walking and, going out and talking with people and hanging out with them. And I discovered, I can do other things besides playing video games. But now that that's been put and dealt with in my heart, now it's like video games are not everything to me. And so there's no place for video games to land in my heart that would take me away from God and others and make me feel less than without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think that's a really good point. And I think I touched on this as well. Moving through addiction, if you're watching this and you struggle with the addiction, or if you have in the past, and, it's something that you kind of put your stamp of authority over and decided, hey, I'm not going to struggle with this anymore. Just like in the Bible, when it talks about Jesus, talks about casting out demons. It's like, when you cast out the demon, if you don't replace what has been cast out with something new, it's going to wander around for a little bit and come back even more fierce. Specifically, it says it'll bring 7 more demons with it, And addiction is the same way, because when I moved away from Final Fantasy XI, in between then and now, that was 7-8 years ago, something like that, between when I quit. Since then, I have gotten married. I have a really awesome inner circle of friends. I have a especially awesome outer circle of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances and people that I just text with and just engage with frequently. I moved out of my parents' house into a friend's house. I moved out of a friend's house into an apartment with my wife, and I moved out of that apartment into a house that I now own, which is really awesome. I have healthy hobbies. I play the guitar. I found out that I'm really good with building things. Uh, building things for the house. I've learned to use tools. I'm a man. I can work on my own car, which is really sweet. I've gotten rid of all my debts. There's all this stuff that I've made priorities and big rocks out of that previously all that space. Like if you just picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big rocks, all 5 of those big rocks used to be Final Fantasy 11. And now I have my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, my personal responsibilities for taking care of and paying for my house. I have my new business that I started this year. We have Thought Raid. There's all this stuff that I now have as priorities. Um, and that's I just think that's kind of interesting. So if I just want to encourage you that if you're addicted to something right now, you need to start thinking to yourself, okay, well, what rocks is my addiction taking the place of?
Yeah.
Well, that should belong to other things. Like Brandon, when you came through your addictions, what did you have to fill those spaces with?
Well, when it came to like just thinking about pornography, for instance, which is one of the biggest addictions that I've had to replace social interaction was a big one, specifically with my peers. Like there's a difference between being interactive with someone older than you and someone who is your age. And I think you need both. I had interactions with people older than me, no problem. But like there's always, especially when you're younger, there's always that disconnect with the older generation. So it's like no matter how much you respect and veneer, is that a word? Is that the right word? I don't know. Anyways, no matter how much you respect the older generation, there's just a level of realness that you can't get from them because you don't. It's hard to relate until you're in the season that they're in. So with people that are in the season that you're at, who are your age, I needed that a lot. I needed to have people who were dealing with similar things that I was dealing with, and that were a risk, like that could reject me. Like I knew that adults understood me, but people my age might not. They might think that I need to be thrown out, dangerous, don't talk to him. So that was one thing I had to replace was social interaction. I needed to have people my age to spend time with. There was also like a need for more activity in my life too, I think. And it's kind of hard to say because it was like I got set free in 2011 in October. And so then I got into small groups with people like other guys. Like ironically, given the fact that I was dealing with homosexual pornography, I needed other guys in my life. And I think that kind of comes out of like who you spend time with most is who you kind of slowly take on those traits. So if I'm spending time with adults and women, naturally I'm going to take on those traits, and that's not the best way to become more of a man. So I needed friends, guy friends. So I got that, and then I had to like shift my identity, what I believed about myself. So I guess my beliefs had to shift. I guess it's another thing I had to change. Like I had to change how I viewed myself because I was kind of pretty immediate. Like I couldn't view myself as a victim anymore. I had to see myself as this does not conquer me. I conquer it. I am capable of doing more. Like I'm capable of saying no to this, rather than I can't. That was a pillar that had to change. And then another pillar was just activities. Like I couldn't just stay at home and be by myself as much as I wanted to. I had to get more involved in other people's lives and hang out with people, go to events, whatever. There was a degree of which I was too isolated that I had to un-isolate myself.
Yeah.
So those are at least the 3 major ones that I can think of that had to change when I came out of addiction.
Something you said was really good. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. I finished my thought.
No, just the whole belief thing. Because, when you're struggling through something, like when I was struggling through first Final Fantasy and then League of Legends, well, first of all, I struggled with Final Fantasy. And then I decided, hey, I want to exchange everything that I'm putting into this for a better lifestyle. And then I got married. And at that time, I had exchanged Final Fantasy for League of Legends because it was more manageable. It didn't have the time sink of MMOs, just like World of Warcraft or whatever. And then it was like, okay, well, what am I going to exchange? Because when I was in Final Fantasy, it's like I was exchanging everything, relationships, my projected future of like my career and how I was like growing, my growth in general. When I was married, I had to exchange. Okay, well, am I going to put time and effort into my priority of League of Legends, or am I going to put time and effort into my priority of making my wife feel loved and making time for her and stuff and reconciling that? But each time it's like when I started to move away from it, there was that pull on my heart, because you can behaviorally change yourself, but that doesn't change the feelings, you know. And that was really interesting because when I remember when I canceled my subscription to Final Fantasy 11, it was one of the hardest things I've done in my life. It sounds trivial, and to somebody that doesn't understand how MMOs can grip you, I don't expect you to understand. But those who can, it's tough. So when I canceled my subscription, I was like, but my schedule opened up. I had 18 extra hours in the day that I could do with whatever. But it was still tough. There was always that desire to go back to it, And then when I was doing League of Legends, it's like, okay, well, I have a few hours. I could just pull it up and play, and I fight that. And there was also little feelings of, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. All these different things. But you talking about belief, really, guys. If you ask me the question, can you quit addiction without a relationship with God? I would say, yeah. It's not going to be easy because you have to do it on your own strength and you have to motivate yourself and you have to continue to motivate yourself. But for me, a few years after I quit Final Fantasy 11 and I started filling my time with growth and just looking for people to put in my life and searching for love, not like Love is Blind, the Netflix series or whatever, like searching for love is in actual relationships, the more God was pulling on my heartstrings. And when I was like, all right, Jesus, I acknowledge that you want a relationship, and just started talking to God and stuff. I started realizing that sharing that with him made it so much easier for me to navigate it. I was like, God, could you help me with this, please? I'm frustrated. And the Bible talks about how when you start seeking, you start finding answers. It doesn't say through your works you are saved. You're not saved by your works. And I think that's something that was hard for me to conceive because back in the day when I was in my Amway mode of thought, I thought that I could do everything through just my works. If I worked hard enough, if I just put my what's that expression? Put something to the grindstone.
Nose to the grindstone? I think it's nose.
I guess. Put my nose to the grindstone, and manufacture that change. It's I would say it's virtually impossible without God to make the 18-inch journey, which we know as Christians as the journey from your head to your heart. How do you make it a heart change where it's an actual change?
Yeah.
Adib just said, I was addicted to cocaine, ketamine, gay sex, pornography, and clubbing. Mm-hmm. Christ was delivered.
Christ has
delivered me from everything in 1 week.
April this year. That's amazing. Hallelujah.
That's awesome. But, talking about exchanging, it's like once I gave all that stuff up and I was like, God, would you help me with this? He started showing me that my identity was not in Final Fantasy. My identity wasn't in League of Legends. It's not even in my marriage. My identity is in who he created me to be.
Yeah.
And through understanding my identity, I started understanding that there's a purpose for my life, which I didn't even believe through all my other addictions. And it's weird. Like right now, if you ask me if I had any addictions, I don't think that I really have any. I have some things that are on the fringe of that I have to wrestle with and think, okay, well, am I actually going to give this the authority over my mind and my heart? But when I'm on my path of listening to God and just having a relationship with him every day, I wake up and I'm like, all right, God, what do you want me to do? That's the first and foremost. And when it's my old boss talked to me about this analogy, but think of it as this pitcher. And in this pitcher, I'm put it in a frame. In this pitcher, Well, I'll use this as an example. In this cup, there's only room for enough golf balls. There's like room for maybe 4 golf balls, and everything else has to be added afterwards, right? You can't pour sand in there, then the golf balls, because it won't fit. You have
Yeah.
to pour the golf balls in, then the sand. And that's an analogy for your priorities and all the other superfluous things. And if you put your priorities first and everything there comes after, you run out of space in your life, whether it's emotional capacity or time capacity. Um,
So I'm
and
guessing
that
it's like relating to like the golf balls are the specific things that you need in your life, the big things, and the sand is all the extra things you pour in there, kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
for my life, um, you know, what we do here, what I do in Break the Meta, my relationships, like all that stuff that I mentioned earlier, all those things would be the big rock priorities. Um, but what do you think about that, Brandon? What would be your big rock priorities right now? I'm a, that is an awesome song. Oh, I love Simple Plan so much.
I'm glad you got that one because I got it whoop right over me. But yeah, priorities in my life presently. Um, I mean, honestly, as I guess cliche as it may sound, the biggest priorities in my life are people primarily and God. But it's true, and it goes deeper than that, obviously. Um, but like first and foremost, my priority is what God do you want to do? What do you want me to do? Like, and how can I get closer to you? That is always my priority. I'm not lying about that. I'm very serious because I've come to a place and recognize that me feeling fulfilled every time that I am with God and obedient to him, that's where I feel the most alive. I really don't feel alive outside of that. It's just that's been my personal experience. And then from that point, the next priorities comes to the people. Actually, in this case, it's people and thought rate are pretty darn close. Because, like, thought rate has to be a little bit ahead because at the end of the day, this is what's going to, allow me to. This is what's going to be able to pay the bills, and this kind of thing. So, like, if I don't give priority to this, like, no one else is going to be able to build. It's not like a pre-established company. This either is birthed or it isn't birthed. But, like, immediately after that, and because of the nature of thought rate, people are right there. You, like, my close friends, you, Dan, Eric, the three of you are top priority to me. My parents, top priority to me. And then from there, there's just a bunch of other, like, friends that are also pretty darn close after that. Like, it's a very tight-knit. Like, it's hard to say, like, there's someone lower because they're so close in the first place, a lot of people. And then, of course, you go down to acquaintances and so on and so forth. But primarily at this season of my life, it's what God's calling me to do, thought rate, people, semi-close people, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
and levels of priority. And I've always prioritized people. It even plagues how I play video games. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I was playing with Axeman. We're playing Stardew Valley, which is a great game if you're looking for a nice RPG-esque farming
Oh,
game.
I love the music.
Yes, so good. And like here's Axe. He's going around. He's taking care of the farm animals. He's watering the crops. He's going into the mountains and getting ore. And what am I doing? I'm giving gifts to all the villagers. And just like even in my games, who I am permeates through it. Like, people are always my priority. Forget the farm, forget the mining, forget building up my house. I don't care. Penny, the woman that I like to marry in the game, priority. Like, small child, elderly person. Like, the first person that I became like almost best friends with was George, the old man in the wheelchair. Like, priorities. Like, I gotta get these people. Gotta get all the the dialogue options and to see who they become as I help them out. So, like, people are my
Yeah.
priority.
Brandon, something you said earlier, has a lot of wisdom, and I think it's just understanding what you have the true capacity for. Especially when it comes to time and relationships, because we were talking before the stream about somebody where you have identified that they may be living life beyond their capacity to do so when it comes to relationships. And I think, looking at the questions that I just posted in chat, when do you know that you're ready to re-engage in something you used to be addicted to, and how do you evaluate that? I think one of the true marks of maturity is identifying what you can and cannot do, like what you truly can and cannot do. Because in my growth season, in the past 7 years, if I think about Final Fantasy XI, the game and all the people that were in it and all the relationships, it's undergone a lot of changes. And meanwhile, those changes were happening, there were changes happening in my heart and in my life. I was starting to understand what can I actually do? What do I have time to do? So I've filled out all my priorities, as I mentioned earlier, and it's like, okay, well, what's left over? What's the sand? And I've gotten to the point where I segregated time for me to do with as I please. Also, Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays, I've decided, those are my streaming nights where I play whatever game on Twitch, and I was like, why have I had the desire to go back to this game? And so looking at the question again, when do you know that you're ready to re-engage in something you used to be addicted to, and how do you evaluate that? I had to look at it and think to myself, okay, well, what is it going to require of me? Right. So whatever your addiction was, whether it's a video game, whether it's golfing, whether it's ping pong, going out to bars, alcohol, drinking alcohol or whatever, what do you actually have the capacity for, and what is it going to require? And when I saw that it only requires the true time expectation of about a tenth of what it used to get things done, and I actually have that amount of time plus more to pour into it in any capacity, it's like, okay, well, I think I can do this. Plus I have different means of accountability now. I've got my wife, I've got you, I've got other friends, I've got this stream to be accountable to, and priorities to be accountable for. So if you looked at my schedule, there are just things that have time slots, and especially when I work with my clients, one of the big questions is, okay, well, how do I actually make a game plan, and how do I put that game plan into motion when it comes to priorities? Well, you have to identify them first, which I've done. And then you have to put them in your schedule in pen and not pencil. And what that means essentially is that you can't erase where you've put them in your schedule, right? So for instance, today is a planning day for me. I spent X amount of hours planning. Tomorrow is going to be productivity day where I work on a blog or a video, or I have clients. Wednesday is an education day. Thursday is a day where I do nothing but spend time with my wife and friends. Friday, that's a streaming day. So we have Thought Raid. And, early in the day, Friday, I usually work on our budget or whatever. And all these things have protected time in my schedule, right? And so, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if that's protected, all my priorities are taken care of, what are the red flags for me going back into this, And having that game plan set up is how I evaluated, okay, well, it's actually okay for me to go back into this. What do you think about that, Brandon, as far as things that could potentially be healthy? Because earlier you said, just because you're addicted to something doesn't make it bad.
Right. In the cases of the certain things that we know are not morally wrong and not bad, the areas that are kind of like gray, or maybe a good thing, but we've been using it incorrectly in the past. If there comes a point, I feel like, where you've had some time to be separated from it, and you've also had some time that you've replaced the areas that it shouldn't be in with healthy things, foundation of God, foundation of friendships, foundation of, having a life that's fulfilled. Because the reality is, you can't take an addiction away and not replace it with something. If you take an addiction away and don't replace with something better, then there's going to be a void that it leaves, and you can't go back. It's not time to touch what you went through. You have to first replace it with something better. And so once you've taken the time and you've replaced the void that it leaves with healthy friendships, with time with God, with changing your mindsets on a regular basis until they're lining up with what God's word says about you, what God is saying to you, what your friends are saying that are positive. Once you've had that time to replace, after that point, and of course, if you have the time to do so, and it's something that's been on your mind regularly, like maybe I should try this, but it was a problem before, like God doesn't want us to live in fear of the things we were once addicted to, even the bad things, even the things that we should not go back to. God doesn't want us to live in fear about anything. Anxious for nothing, fear not. There is not anything in that list except for living in the fear of the Lord. Like, that's the only healthy fear that I can think of. Other than that, God doesn't want us to live in fear. So if after you've taken the time to distance yourself from that, you've replaced the void that it left with healthy things, if it is on your mind and you're thinking about it, it could be a sign that it's time to re-look into that place which you had to step away from, because God may have a new perspective for you when you return to it. Like I said, like an encouragement to see, like, wow, this thing really is no longer a master of me anymore. And you can begin to see what it was originally designed for. Because the reality is, if you are going to properly help someone who is in that place and you're just in stage one where you're trying to replace it with healthier things, then you won't be completely equipped to help those who are also still presently in it. So, like, if, for instance, like, if you were abusing pain medication, you didn't need it, you had to stop abusing it, it's not been a healthy thing. Not everyone abuses pain medication. So I think what happens sometimes is, like, people, like, they realize, oh crap, I made a mistake, I've been using this wrong, and then they go on this tirade, this warpath to, like, anti-pain medication. It took a chunk of my life, I got addicted to it, we need to do something about it. That's too far because pain medication has a purpose. Sometimes people just have a headache and they don't have headaches often, and in that case, here is a legitimate substance that I reached over here because I actually have ibuprofen sitting here. Here's a legitimate thing that you can take to help with your headache for that day. And as long as you're working on making sure that you're remaining hydrated and all that kind of stuff, and it's not something that you need to have. It's just like, it's just a thing. So it's like, sometimes God wants us to come back to the place where that would originally kept us bound, to show us how small it really is and to put it into its proper perspective. And if you've gotten to a place where you've made pain medication into this monster and it's just, the world must rid itself of pain medication, or you're afraid of it or resentful or something, and then you can't stop thinking about it, then it may be time, after you've taken the time to replace the void that it left, to look at it again from new perspective, fresh eyes of where God has brought you to, so that way you can see it for what it was originally designed for.
And doing this, getting back into Final Fantasy XI has been kind of eye-opening in that regard, because seeing it for what it really is, it's a form of reward. It's a form of, I'm not going to say that all escape is bad, because there are some times where you just need to disassociate yourself from something so you can go back into it full. It's a form of escape that is actually healthy if used in the right way. But going back into it's kind of interesting, because in the 7 years I've been gone, or been apart from it, I'll say, there are people who have not been apart from it, and they, you can tell by the things they've accomplished in the game and they've acquired. I found myself comparing myself to them, and it mildly stresses me out. And, the current topic, as I posted in here, are boundaries and red flags. And I'm like, okay, so this is a red flag. My inclination here is to compare myself to them and think I have to spend all this time to catch up. And it's like, wait a minute. Why do I feel bad about the 7 years I was away from this game? Because they have something in there that I don't. Okay, well, what do I have? Oh, okay. So I'm actually a healthy person now. I actually know my value. I'm impacting people. I'm serving people. I'm doing things for people. I'm using the God-given gifts that I have, and I'm using my identity to do things that God would have me do, right? And I'm super thankful for that. And that kind of brings me back to where I need to be, being even. Um, and that's a really humbling place to be. It's a great place to be too. It takes all the pressure off. Something God's been telling me through this is just pace yourself. Maintain a healthy pace with it, because you're not using this as your identity anymore. You're using this for fun. You're supposed to enjoy it, and you don't enjoy it when it's your identity, because you're never going to attain it. Because one day this game is 18 years old now. One day this game is going to go away, and if I find my identity in it, or if I find my life pacing of my enjoyment in it, guess what? That's going to go out the door with it as well. And I've thought about that. It's like, okay, so whether I'm just killing monsters or getting a piece of gear or like equipment that my character has been questing after for a while, it's like it should be one of those things where it's like supplemental. Oh, this is cool. This is great. It's just like having a shirt in your closet that you like a lot. It's like, that's not my identity. If it went away, that would be sad, but at the same time, I'm not going to fall to pieces. Much like if this is another boundary that I've put in place. If I get to the point where I say no to a friend, or no to a client, or no to, I don't know, hanging out with my wife or paying bills or whatever, in order to play this game, that is where I need to stop. And, another boundary is just holding it with open hands. It's like, am I willing to let this go if I need to let this go?
Yeah.
Right. So the biggest question of how do you evaluate if you should go back into it? Are you able to go into it with open hands?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thing to keep in mind, is that also, depending on what it is, there may be a season where it can come back into your life and then must fall back out of your hands again. Too, that's something I've experienced, and I've been sitting here thinking about this the whole time, because I know this is relevant to the topic, but I'm also still in the process of figuring out, like, what is it that specifically God was showing me through the time of which I was involved. But, like, one of the things that Tim, is that I want to say it was 2018. I'd moved out of my parents' house. This was the first full year that I lived apart from my parents. And all of a sudden, during that time, like, I felt like God had me go through a phase of, like, really facing the things that once, like, caused me issue. Like, I definitely feel like I went through a season of, like, okay, I can't continue to be afraid of this. And I feel like the fact that this is regularly on my mind is that God is trying to show me something in this. And so, like, I went through a period of time where I ended up playing The Sims again for a time. And that was a game where I definitely, when God brought me out of pornography back in 2011, I walked away from that because it was its own problem. That was kind of like, it was like a reciprocal thing. It was like I'd play The Sims, which would then cause me to get into pornography, which would then try to go back into The Sims because it seemed somehow less of a problem than pornography, and then that went me back into pornography. So it was like a spiral. But in 2018, I kind of felt like, after 7 years of being pornography free, I kind of felt like I was having freedom to go back to it. And so I did. And for all of 2018, I was fine. I legitimately, like, I actually handled The Sims fine. And in fact, most of 2019, fine. Not really much of a problem. I played it for what it was meant to be played, as like a family simulator kind of thing. And so it was a moment of, like, growth for me, because it was like, I'm the master of this. This is not the master of me, and finally I can enjoy The Sims for what it was meant to be enjoyed. But then in this year, I've had to give it up, because this year, as I started to deal with pornography again, I was like, I could see the reciprocal spiral happening again, and I had to take a step away from it, because I was like, I can't. This is just not working. Like, had my desires has retainted the game, and I had to take a step back from it. And I've been sitting here the whole time. I didn't want to necessarily bring this up, because I'm still in the process of, like, figuring out what God was specifically showing me through that time. But I can say though that even though we had to take a step away from it again, one, I'm not afraid of it, which is something I was previously. So I know that's a big
Hmm.
thing. If there's anything that I did get from that time, it is that I'm no longer afraid of The Sims or anything pornography related. It's now more of a heart change rather than just a I can't do this. It's like a I don't want to do this anymore. So there's that. And then two, it was just a recognition that I could enjoy something for what it was created for rather than just immediately being sexualized. Um,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. I wish I could bring more to the table on this. I just felt like it needed to be brought up because this is kind of what we're talking about in general. So
Yeah.
I think it all connects back to like what we were talking about. Like you want to hold it with open hands. So it's like if
Hmm.
I can enjoy this, then I will enjoy this. But if there comes a point where I can't enjoy it properly anymore and it's starting to take places it shouldn't be, then I got
Hmm.
to give it back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's, you got to remember that sand is going to be sand and sand is never going to be a rock.
Mm.
You have to keep your priorities and your focus proper. But I want to close this out with talking about healthy navigation. So, like, what am I doing to navigate this in a healthy way, and how do I actually view it? And I've touched on a few pieces of these, and hopefully, guys, if you're dealing with something and you want to go back into it, or actually, if you're just trying to get out of it, you can use these tools because a lot of people, like, if you think about quitting your addiction to cocaine or heroin or whatever, you go to a place and they don't just quit cold turkey. I mean, some people do, but it's really stressful on the body. They give them smaller doses until they're able to wean themselves. But what I've been doing with this, as I mentioned earlier, is I've been using it kind of as a reward system. And this is still a new process because I just started playing again last week, and this is my first week back to work. But like tomorrow, there's a list of things I need to get done within specific time frames, and if I finish early, I'm going to see, okay, well, do I need to do anything else? Can I do anything else to add value to what I'm doing? Or do I feel the peace to give myself a little bit of game time as a reward? Right. And that is absolutely healthy. And then looking at priorities, just weighing, okay, well, what are my priorities? Putting them in my schedule with specific time, or just protecting them in general. Like I was saying earlier, like my friendships. If I'm supposed to meet with Brandon, am I going to cancel on him so I could play a video game? Or am I supposed to meet with the client? Am I going to cancel on them? Somebody was talking to me the other day about how they have a friend or an acquaintance or somebody they knew who called out of work because they wanted to play Kingdom Hearts.
No,
It's
no.
they weren't sick. They didn't call out and say, you know what, I'm going to use a vacation day. They were like, no, I'm actually sick. I'm not going to work. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to make sure I protect my boundaries and I don't make these stupid excuses like I did before. Because way in the past, when I was addicted, I totally did that. I didn't go into work or whatever because there was an event going on that I wanted to participate in, and I didn't plan for it accordingly. Back then, I didn't have the capacity to plan accordingly because I didn't have control over my time. And now I do, you know? And in that control of my time, I get to decide what comes in and what goes out. And the Bible even talks about that. What comes out from a man is what defiles him, not what goes in. So I can decide, okay, here's what I'm going to choose. And if I find myself unable or giving my choice to make that choice or giving my authority to make that choice up to this game, well, that's a red flag and a boundary that I need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But navigating this in a healthy way is maintaining my priorities as priorities first.
Yeah. I think this is kind of hitting me. I think one of the important reasons, if you feel like this is something that's really big on your mind, you want to re-examine something that you were originally addicted to. One of the important reasons why it's okay and important to go through that is because God's intention is for us to be slaves to nothing but Him, really, to be controlled by nothing, and to like legitimately not want bad things. And so sometimes I know that God allows us to experience things that were originally a problem to us so we can truly get it. Like God's not about like, oh, here's the 10 rules that you need to follow and and there's no explanation. He wants you to like legitimately fully get it here. in your heart so that there
Mhm.
is no desire left to do what's wrong. And so a part of that transformation process is to re-examine the things that addicted you. Are they truly bad things that are definitely not good, you should never touch? Or are they things I handled incorrectly previously and now I'm equipped to handle them properly? So like
Mhm.
in the case of like what I'm going through struggles now, which I haven't, it's been a month, I want to say, since I was last in with pornography, which is great. Um,
Mhm.
but since the time of what I've been going through, I'm much more at a place where it's like I legitimately don't want this. I'm no longer afraid of it. It's no longer a matter of like I was told not to do this and therefore I'm not gonna. It's more like I've seen all there is to offer and I don't want it. And that's a big thing for me because I came from a
Mhm.
very religious background. So, to for me to like I didn't grow up like you, Tim, in the world and got to taste all these things and realize they were trash and then came to Christ and realized he was much better. I've gone through, I didn't touch any of them, so I have no idea how right or wrong they are. I just kind of accepted it because that's how it was raised, and slowly I've had to make my belief into my own. And so that's what God's been having me go
Mhm.
through. I feel like these past years of being on my own is like really making my walk with Him my own. And why do I not want to do this? Oh, because when I go down this path, it makes me feel like trash. It makes me feel
Mhm.
terrible about myself. It makes me feel like I can't do anything but that thing. And I feel addicted to it. And now I know I don't want it because it's like I don't like that part of me when I'm in this. So I'm going to put that away, not because I was told not to, but because
Mhm.
I just don't want it. And so I think in the same way, like I feel like sometimes it is part of God's goodwill to allow us to re-examine the things that previously tripped us up so that we can
Mhm.
truly know what is good and what is wrong and like really taste and see that the Lord is good rather than to assume.
Mhm.
And it's a heart change rather than just a head change.
And something else as you're talking about growing up differently, I think something that people deal with, especially when they're going through addiction, especially in Christian communities, comparison. Because if I compared myself to you, or if I compared myself to Matt Peterson or Pastor, I have had thoughts as I've been going through different types of addictions throughout the past however many years I've been Christian. Um, I've been comparing myself, and I'm like, well, why don't they deal with this? And the thought's gone through my head. Matt Peterson would never deal with an addiction to Final Fantasy 11, you know. But then I have to remember, well, it's up to us to seek out our own salvation. We each have our own individual relationships with Jesus, and nobody's relationship is going to compare because it's our relationship, right? And it's going to happen on specific terms relevant to us. My terms are never going to apply to you. And the second that you get into comparison, that's where condemnation creeps in. And condemnation that's the voice of the enemy. He's basically saying, just give up. You don't qualify. You're not good enough. You're never going to get out of this. You're not as good as this person because this person A doesn't struggle with it, or B has already gone through it. Well, you got to do the work you have to do the work relevant to your relationship with God. And that's the only way that you make the head change into a heart change. Nobody else can do that for you.
Yeah.
No thought process or perspective is going to do that for you. You can't just acquire a perspective of overcoming something.
Yeah.
You have to go through the work, and you have to understand that it's a process. It takes time. It takes grace, especially grace for yourself, but
Yeah.
also it takes accountability to yourself and saying, hey, God, what do you think about this? If you go through that and you just keep comparing yourself to other people, just thinking, okay, well, I'm going to change this. It's all going to be me. It's always going to stay up here as a head change. It's never going to go down to your chest as a heart change, and heart change being just something that becomes one of those things where it's like, I don't even want this anymore. That's
Yeah.
not a head change. That is a heart change.
Yeah.
You can't manufacture that.
You can't.
So yeah, just be careful of comparison. The second you start thinking to yourself, well, this other person doesn't deal with this, or this other person would manage it in this way, you got to understand that with that is going to come condemnation, and you can't make progress with condemnation present. You have to address that first.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Comparison. and also condemnation. But comparison is definitely a killer. A killer to progress, a killer to ingenuity. Um, like obviously, like, you know, looking at what someone else has done and being inspired by it and then building off of that, that's not a problem. But if you've come to a place where you've already disqualified yourself because of where someone is currently at, not worth it. Not worth it. You're never going to grow beyond where you're currently at if you're constantly looking at what other people have accomplished. And in light of what you're accomplishing, when you haven't been doing what they've been doing for the amount of time or have the same thought process, it's just not apples to apples. God has something specifically that you can do, and he is not going to judge you based off of what someone else has done or is doing. It's just, that's not how God works. He's just, and he is fair. So that means if you have a handicap for whatever reason, he keeps that in mind when he gives you something. Like, he doesn't like, oh, like, okay, person who, I'm going to judge this person who's in a wheelchair to this person who can run a marathon and has really strong legs. Like, what? Like, that's not just, that's not fair, that's not God. God is just, he is fair.
You know, I'm thinking about that passage where it talks about don't despise humble beginnings, because when we identify, like when you first identify that you have an addiction to something, there's all this stuff that you deal with, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't want this. And then you go through that phase. It's like the grief, the phases of grief, you know? And I think, you know, when you see where you're at and where you want to be, it seems like that road is going to take forever and it's going to take, oh my gosh. But I think we're meant to just enjoy that process. And if you're in that place, I know that hearing that you're supposed to enjoy it just sounds like something that you don't want to hear, like you want to throw something at the screen and hit my face, you know? But, you know, if I look back and I think about all the things that have happened in my journey out of my addiction to Final Fantasy XI, it's all been really cool. But the crazy thing is, in retrospect, or I'm sorry, in the moment, I didn't realize what was going on, you know? But in hindsight, it's like, wow, all that stuff happened over time, you know, in 7 years' time. And 7 years sounds like a lot of time, but you know, in the scheme of things, I just, you know, it doesn't compare. It's totally worth the investment is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, and just realizing that God never plucks you out of your situations. He wants to walk with you through it.
Yeah. And
your value doesn't change in his eyes, regardless of what your addiction is. You know, he's going to walk you through it in a way that's full of grace and is full of love. And he'll let you take the wheel up to the point where you can't handle it anymore, then he'll take back over. It's just like a father teaching his son to drive. It's like there are certain limitations where he knows that you're limited, but he's going to let you try that extra 10%, because the extra 10% is where you fail and where his grace comes into play. You know, it says, in your weakness, I am made strong, but you never get to experience his strength if you never get yourself into a place where you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there was a quote that I made based off of that. I'm trying to remember what it was now, because I'm pretty sure I put it into quote form and then put that onto Facebook, and now I'm like going through the quotes and like trying to find it. Which is it? Oh man, it's not love fine tunes the heart. Oh, that's what it was. It was, we can only be as strong as we are weak before Jesus. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. We can only be as strong as we are weak before Jesus, because if you're not willing to bring your weakness to him, you know, like, and to like be honest about those areas that you're weak, then it's just like holding on to the wheel and preventing him from like helping you and teaching you how to drive in that particular area. So there comes a point where you have to recognize your own weaknesses and limitations and give them to God, which then he partners with you and gives you his strength so that you can be strong in that area, whereas previously you would have failed.
Yeah, and in that vein, I just want to say to you guys, just in the vein or in light, I don't know, being humble about it, going into this, I may fall on my face. You know, it is completely possible that I will fall on my face and make some mistakes, But the cool thing is, God's okay with you making mistakes. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of the relationship. He knows that we're in a broken world. He knows that there are things that we struggle with and we deal with that are not part of the kingdom. And the whole message about what we're supposed to do is bringing the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
And identifying areas where the kingdom is not present and taking that authority back. So, the really cool thing is, I've got friends, I've got a wife who loves me very much, but most of all, I have God. And, luckily my friends, my wife, and God all operate in grace, but I also have to walk in grace for myself, saying, hey, I'm going to go through this. I'm going into the extra 10% where I may fall on my face, but that's okay because I'm open to being corrected if I do. And, guys, if you do that and you just say, hey, God, what do you want me to do with this? Or God, help me with this. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. Humility is very important. But yes, I think ultimately God wants you to own your faith. He wants you to own where you're at. And if there is an area where you are not currently convinced that this is right or wrong and like you're focused on or whatever, and it's an area that is not going to automatically lead to some kind of destruction, like some kind of truly destructive behavior, if it's an area that's technically not a bad thing, I think it's okay to take a step with that direction, experience it, but bring God into it and allow him to show you how to navigate that freshly. And just be prepared. Like, it may be something that it's like, oh, well, I'm actually really good and great, or it may have to slip right back out of your hands again. I don't know. In my case, the thing that I took a step in, eventually I had to step back out of. But in your case, it may be something different, and that's okay because, again, God wants you to own your faith. He wants you to know something rather than just do this because I told you. Like, yes, there are times we do need to follow him in that way, but I think God wants it to sink from your head to your heart so that it is something that you truly desire rather than something that you just learn to desire and it's not really stuck. It's just something that's been like put and forced in you. Because at the end of the day, I cannot be stressed enough. At the end of the day, if it's not situated in your heart, it's gonna come back up anyways. So it's like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like just go through it with God so it can be addressed properly and put into where it needs to be, because it may be that you're doing great, it may be that there's just an area that needs to be adjusted at, but like God is okay and he is capable. Like, it's not the end of the world. He can definitely like transform you in that whole process. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to use one analogy that we can close out.
Yeah.
I've started going to the gym with my wife, and the temptation there is to go to the bench and put 245 plates, 345 plates on each side. But you get to a point where you realize, oh, I actually can't do this, and it's humbling. So if I was going to the gym, I have to think, okay, well, what am I capable of doing right now? What is within my reasonable limit of expectation? Right. So when I go to the gym, I do curls, and it's like, I do, 50 pounds or 60 pounds, whatever I do with the thing. A bench press isn't that impressive. I'm not going to say what it is because it's kind of embarrassing, but I remember going in there one day and I tried to overdo it. I tried to curl 100 pounds, could not do it. I tried to bench, 200 pounds, could not do it. But I think when you go into that place, you will know, it's not going to be a shock to you. You are going to know what your limitations are. And if you keep trying to push past, you're going to end up hurting yourself. And not only do you have to learn the lesson, but you're also hurt and you have to heal from that too. So guys, if you go back into a place, or if you're going into a place where your resolve is being tested or your growth is being tested, just walk through it with humility and say, okay, am I in over my head? Do I need to lower my expectations? And that's okay. But it does take humility. So just expect that and don't be shocked by it.
Yep. So yeah, that's really good. I enjoyed talking about this. I got a little bit more perspective on things. That's one thing I love about Thought Rate. It's like you come with a topic planned in mind, and then ultimately you still learn new things, even though this is something that you thought about and you're wanting to present and work through. I love it personally. So I appreciate to be bringing this up again, because it gave me a chance to reflect over my own personal experiences of where God kind of invited me into like re-experiencing things and like the stuff that I learned through it. I was not thinking about that before this point, so that's cool. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching today. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to take a second and to let you know that very soon we're going to begin opening the door to talk to you about where we're at financially and where we want to go. I think for a while we've not really been touching on that because I feel like God's been really wanting us to focus on building Thought Raid and making it into what it is. And let me tell you, we have really built some good stuff into this. We've got over 100 videos on YouTube and counting, and we're on multiple social media sites. We're on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Discord. And we're not slowing down. And so, but we're at a place right now where we're gonna start. We need your support. I mean, for me personally, the amount of time that I have to be able to completely and totally focus on Thought Raid is coming to a close, and I'd like to start opening the door for you guys to be able to financially invest and partner with us. So stay tuned, and we'll hopefully have some things ready to talk about on Friday, because we're going to be having some meetings and setting some things in motion. If you already have been enjoying this and you would like to begin investing now, we do already have a Patreon up, and the link for that, you can actually go to, I think if you're on our channel, there's a little icon in the side that has the link to our Patreon, and I think you can donate any particular amount you want per month. But we'll eventually have a tier system set up in that. So if that's something you would like to do now, that is available. You can find the link to that on our YouTube page, and we'd love to have you support us in that way. But just keep posted. We're going to be talking about that more soon, and I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again Friday. Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a good night. Thank you, guys.